So as most of you know, I'm Toonie Charter, the Executive Director of District Hall and Venture Cafe Providence. We were excited to be able to partner with Ximedica and NEMIC in this monthly show. Sorry, I'm home in Newport and a motorcycle just went by. Since 2014, Ximedica has conducted this meeting as an internal monthly information sharing platform to inform its employees about the newest medical related technologies in the public forum, with the intent to spur creative ideas and innovative thinking in their work. As a company that partners with leading medical device, pharmaceutical, and diagnostics companies to design, develop, and manufacture solutions for the healthcare market, obviously innovation is at the core of everything Ximedica does. And this program is awesome. District Hall Providence, we're celebrating our 1-year anniversary, by the way. We are so sleeves rolled up, heads down, creating great programming and keeping our community connected that I keep forgetting this is our 1-year anniversary. So happy birthday to us. And it's a great way to celebrate with this week's program, actually all of our programming this month. We connect, that's what we do. We support startups and innovators and small businesses by providing them with free and open workspace. We connect anyone with an idea or a business to the resources they need to grow. So we do that through our physical space, our virtual space, and our programming. We love that we're able to partner with Ximedica and NEMIC to include this in our globally branded Venture Cafe Thursday gathering. So it's at the tail end in August, but in September, we're moving to a little bit later in the day. We'll be kicking off our Thursday gatherings at 11:30 starting in September. So the next program, this next program is September 17th, I believe. It's the third Thursday of every month. And before we get started, I want to turn it over to our partners, Danielle from NEMIC.
Hello, I'm really excited for this event today, and I'm Danielle Sturm, and I'm representing the New England Medical Innovation Center, otherwise known as NEMIC, and we are a MedTech venture studio that supports MedTech entrepreneurs really bring their medical ideas forward through programming, advisory services, a physical space, just like Toonie, filled with medical entrepreneurs, and really we just look for helping startups raise successful fundraising. So I always say if there's any innovators in the space that have ideas at any stage in the regulated space, to let us know. We're here to help. One of our missions is to cultivate and help build Providence and Rhode Island as a MedTech hub, because it is, and there is a lot of support here for organizations. And we also work with startups all over the world, bringing them here to easily commercialize their devices. So I'll turn it over. I don't know if Mark's on the call. Oh, yes, he is. I see him there on the call today. Hello. I'll turn it over to Mark, who is our other partner representing Ximedica.
Well, thank you. Before we get to the star of the show, Jessica, I want to thank everyone for joining. Slightly stall a bit because I can see the audience is swelling as we go. So maybe another minute and we'll be at quorum. But people always ask us why we do this. And I think, Toonie, thank you for the introduction. That was very comprehensive. Effectively, Ximedica partners with our clients to bring their concepts all the way through, their ideas for product development, all the way through to commercialization. We have a very rigorous product development process that we have developed over 30 years. And, obviously one of the key things is to talk about innovation. So why we do this is to really talk internally about all the different sort of innovations that are evolving, all the different gadgets and technologies. It really helps stimulate conversation, stimulates ideas. And we have several examples of where we have used some of this thought-provoking platform that you'll see today to help clients, and again, bring those concepts through to the market very quickly and cost effectively. So it's been a very productive forum for us, Ximedica, and also for our clients. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the star of the show because I think we're starting to slow down. And actually, I think I turn it back to Toonie, who's going to introduce Jessica, correct?
Oh, yes, my pleasure.
I want to stick with the protocol. I don't want to be a...
You're welcome to introduce Jessica. Why don't we hand it over to you to do that this month, since I already reminded everyone that we'll be doing this again. We do this every month on the third Thursday.
Yes, indeed. All right, so I'm just going to jump in terms of the structure of this presentation that we hold every month. We, on a continual basis, look at innovations that are coming across multiple different fields, particularly in medtech, but we also are often inspired by analogous industry innovation. So this is our kind of working list of categories that we have our eye on. And of course, any one technology can tick multiple boxes. On this list, we recently, about 3-4 months ago, added a COVID-19 category. And there are plenty of innovations there to share this month as well. So this is a continually evolving list. If there are particular categories in the medtech space that you don't see included here, please reach out, because we're always, again, as I said, looking to continually improve and make this as effective and useful for everyone listening in as the audience. All right, so I'm going to jump in, starting with kind of materials as our kind of our first category. This one, this particular innovation, and this is kind of, I do a kind of Petra Kucha style. So each tech gets about a 60-second description, and we've also allocated some time at the end of this session, about 10-15 minutes, for any kind of Q&A and kind of open discussion. So if you want to add in some questions into the chat box, or hold them until the very end, then we can try and do our best to incorporate some of those questions. Okay, so this first technology is a tattoo EEG electrode. When electrodes are placed on the head to do an EEG, they are hard, and they involve getting to the scalp, which involves shaving the head. And they also involve wearing a head cap, and that could be very impractical, particularly when you're looking to collect continuous data for a long period of time. So this is a new electrode that is essentially acting like a tattoo paper. It's material that is used as from an injection printer. And it's pretty unobtuse and is able to adapt to uneven skin and applied without the use of gel. So potentially more effective for continual monitoring. The next material is a combination of sensors and diagnostics. This is a breathable electronics. So we've seen a lot of different materials to basically wear as patches on the skin to track various different biometrics, if you will. And the idea behind this one is that it has breathability and it has a longer lasting wear. So this is based on a new polymer film material that lets gases like VOCs, volatile organic compounds, sweat through the material so that it can be worn for a longer period over a course of a day. The material has tiny holes, and it's dipped in a silver nanowire solution that's pressed permanently to affix to a film. And that now enables for more optimal electrical conductivity, optical transmittance, and permeability in terms of sweat and air as well, so that it can allow for longer term wear. They are hoping to use this material for electrocardiography and electromyography applications in the future. Similarly, Neurolife, by a partnership between Patel and Ohio State University, for quadriplegics who have severely damaged spinal cords, this is the idea of being able to have a brain-computer interface chip implanted and be able to essentially rebuild the nerves and the muscular control in a patient's limb. So here, a nerve signal is detectable with residual neural circuitry, and it was augmented to essentially enhance the nerve signal so that over time, a particular patient can start to relearn their kind of core motor functions. And so using this wearable haptic sleeve that has 360 sensors embedded in it, it creates a vibration amplifying that nerve signal. And so this, they tested this technology on a particular patient, and this patient has actually gone through an incredible recovery, being able to move now a paralyzed hand and feel parts of what they're touching to establish a better, stronger neural network. In terms of sensors and skin and diagnostics, we've seen a lot of different patches of over the years with this tech forum. Life Signals is an ECG remote monitoring patch. It's pretty self-explanatory. It provides an untethered continuous ECG and heart rate monitor for up to 3 days of patient wear. It could be used in a healthcare or home setting. It operates on a coin battery. And is able to send data to a cloud-based secure HCP or healthcare practitioner platform. And they've gotten CE mark approval for this, so we should expect it in the market imminently. Another sensor device called the Sudep Detection device is intended to help anticipate an epileptic seizure. Sudden unexpected death is also is the acronym of Sudep. Apparently kills about 4,000 people each year, and it's incredibly sad because it's preventable. And this particular technology is able to detect abnormal biosignals, anticipating a seizure that's coming, and then notify clinicians and or loved ones about the danger, and they can then essentially pre-treat or rush to that patient as quickly as possible. The prototype is designed currently to be worn around the neck. Potentially it could evolve to something a little bit more discreet in the future. And their wireless connectivity sends out readings that can be detected and analyzed. A different type of sensor also in the diagnostic space called Walkwise is an attachment to a walker, a walking aid, if you will, and acts as not just an activity tracker, but essentially an alert if the user is idle or even falls with the walker. And as you can see on the app screen shown on the right hand side, these are some of the alerts that the device can offer. So the device has a battery in the kind of attachment to the wheelbase, and the battery lasts for 6 to 12 months, which is pretty impressive in terms of what it's able to do. And the activity data sends information to cloud storage, and that's analyzed by algorithms and being able to detect what's happened and alert the various different care members on a team. It can also promote some very specific details, such as grandpa got out of bed 6 times last night. It's currently available commercially for purchase on a monthly subscription basis. This next sensor is a eyewear technology that tracks food consumption as well as beverage consumption with the help of proximity sensors that recognize your movement of your hand to your mouth that's associated with eating or drinking. The images on the camera of the eyewear captures the food and or beverage that's been consumed, and then the user can confirm its identification. And so you can start to actually kind of monitor kind of food consumption for a user. The sensors also even track jaw motions and throat vibrations to provide a record of not just the amount of food, but how slowly you're eating it to improve your dietary habits. And they're expecting to get to market in about a 3-year period from Carnegie Mellon. This next diagnostic is, we've seen contact lenses that have a lot more capabilities, and this one is adding to the mix with now a therapeutic option. So this of course measures glucose levels like the Google technology that was announced about 5 years ago. But this one is also has the ability to administer a drug, Genistin, in a controlled manner to treat diabetic retinopathy. The lens contains a glucose sensor and a delivery reservoir, and there's a wireless power receiver coil and an integrated circuit chip and radio frequency communication to relay back what the device is doing to the user. This product moves us into robotics, but it's also a sensor. The idea here is a tele-robotic pinch through a glove and haptic feedback back to the user enables for much more careful control by a robot to be able to do various different robotic functions. So the glove itself contains electrical stimulation and very low level, so safe level. It's worn by the user to enable the control of a robotic claw. And so as the robot gets closer to the object, the electrical stimulation in the glove increases frequency, so the user feels what essentially the robot is doing, and having a better haptic sense of the touch that's needed. And so as a result, they're hoping, this particular Texas A&M team is hoping to make robotic procedures safer and more precise in the future, so that you're not just using a knife to cut through something, you're using a knife at a very, very low level, maybe on tissue, so you're not completely cutting an artery, for an example, unintentionally. All right, this robotic, we've seen spots before from Boston Dynamics. And this particular company has been really showcasing various different features and aspects of this robot for many years now. But Spot now has become a sheep herder in New Zealand, controlled remotely by a US team to isolate sheep. Spot has also been used in Singapore to help with monitoring social distancing practices in public parks. I would not want this robot coming up to me and telling me to move away from a friend who I met at the park, but there it is. For $75,000, there's another job that Spot is taking over potentially even dogs. Tom Roof, who was one of our director of engineers, identified this evolution of Spot for us. All right, in the user interaction space, there's always a couple of apps or technologies that are kind of pushing the limits, or pushing kind of the boundaries of what we expect an app to do. And this one gave me some intrigue as well. So this is the idea of a quiet shop time chatbot, produced by a grocery store in Ireland called Liddell. And it's intended to help customers figure out when they can get to the store, grocery, to do their shopping, to avoid avoid a lot of crowd, or avoid a lot of waiting or a lot of queues. And so what this app does is you input what time of day you would like to go, and it tells you whether that time is going to be busy or quiet based on the past 2 weeks of activity in that store. So it does offer somewhat real time or delayed time data, and to help inform customer behavior. A diagnostic that is using the idea of a fidget spinner. Remember those from a couple of years ago that all the kids were using? Using it as basically a centrifuge to help with faster diagnostics for UTIs. This comes out of a Korean academic team. So UTIs are experienced apparently by more than 50% of all women at least once in their lifetime. So that's a big number of potential patient cases. This is a diagnostic currently that the process is quite slow. Patients obviously report their symptoms, and they go to a doctor to get their lab work taken, and those samples are sent typically to a urine lab that takes a few days to process and provide the results. There is a dipstick option, but that has a lot of false positives, and the problem is that antibiotics are prescribed in anticipation of getting the results. And so we want to try and reduce antibiotics to avoid the amount of resistance that's growing in our society. So this new low-cost device leverages the idea of the centrifuge of a fidget spinner to detect a UTI from a 1 milliliter urine sample in under an hour. And it's able to change color and show that to the clinician very easily, to determine that bacteria is present and therefore an antibiotic is correctly to be prescribed. Every MRI by Synaptive Medical is a more conducive, smaller footprint MRI that potentially is cheaper and easier to manage. So if you've been through an MRI or you've been in an MRI lab, you will know how significant the size of these beasts are, and how much kind of special room setup is needed for these devices. So this particular MRI has been designed that it doesn't need to be installed with a crane to drop it into the floor. It doesn't need a special floor to hold the weight. And the magnetism of the unit can be turned off and on relatively quickly, 15 minutes, compared to a conventional MRI machine. There's a smaller safety area that needs to be established around the MRI. So potentially we could start to see these MRIs in actually the emergency department, kind of taking over potentially a space or room in the emergency department. So you're not having in the need for an MRI to go and move, get transported across the hospital facility to get some results and have a better informed diagnosis. So ultimately that will lead to cheaper and faster care, hopefully. Thinking about trying to get more to the point of care, this is a great example. The Airtouch by Aspen State is a simple to use portable x-ray system. So potentially it could be used in an ambulance, could be used in urgent care, even dental and vet environments. It weighs just 5.5 pounds. It has a handle, as the design obviously implies, and it basically works like a large digital camera that has a touch screen. The images are, once they've been acquired, can be sent to a storage, cloud storage system without the need for a computer. There's a battery embedded in it, so it doesn't even have to be plugged in. Until it needs to be charged, which takes 2 hours, and it can capture 300 exposures or potentially, 10 to 15 different patients over a period of a day. And it's already been used in South Korea for driver COVID screening for lungs as well. Got an FDA approval. One of our HCID directors, David Copeland, identified this one for us. So AI or artificial intelligence has been around for a while to help us detect various different cancers in particular, lung, breast, brain, etc., and help with identifying clinical conditions. But the MIT team behind this particular innovation have adapted a machine-based learning system to help determine if the AI prediction should be implemented versus deferring to an expert based on how busy that expert or that team of experts are in that particular facility. So imagine a very busy hospital, for example, where no one really has the time to understand the cancer based on the images that have been provided. Well, this system can say, okay, we'll take it on until the hospital is a little bit calmer. And so the system can adapt based on the needs of the hospital and how busy they are, but still enabling for patient diagnoses, and therefore moving into treatment can happen. I expect to see more of this in the future in terms of deciding when AI can take over and when it's appropriate. This next diagnostic is a smartphone app that uses technology to detect for hemoglobin. So if just by the simple action of taking a low-res smartphone photo of the inner eye, so pulling down the eye like this, we can evaluate for presence of anemia, acute kidney injury, and hemorrhages. Who knew? Just a simple act of taking a photograph like that could have a real impact. The test is obviously non-invasive, can be completed in real time, particularly compared to the stats of a conventional blood test, which would be much more optimal. The software is embedded in an app, and so could be run from a smartphone, which could mean potentially lots of value in more developing markets where some of the more expensive equipment is not available. Also staying in the eye space, iArt AI screening system by INUC, one of our pharmaceutical drug delivery leads. Sheila found this one for us. This is a diabetic I can't pronounce this word. Came up before. Retinopathy detection AI software is meant to be used by HCPs to detect for mild to significant vision loss, including things like glaucoma, macular degeneration, that comes from as a result of having diabetes or stroke or even Alzheimer's. So the retinal images are scanned and checked into a database that compares it to other retinal images of other eye diseases, and can report back in 60 seconds whether the disease is likely to be present. And they completed a clinical trial to help determine their accuracy rate, which was at 97%. They've got an FDA approval. So again, we'll see this in the market soon. Another commercially available product is the A-Scope 4 Cysto by Ambu. So disposable scopes is pretty darn interesting for a lot of hospitals, because to clean these things is really time consuming, very costly. And if you get it wrong, there's a whole bunch of implications for the next patient. So this is a single-use flexible cystoscope used for visualization and interventional therapies in the bladder. The product is presented in a sterile manner, so the urologist can carry the scope and a portable monitor into an ER or even an ICU room and just do the procedure right then and there at point of care, as opposed to winning the patient to a much more cumbersome setup in a procedure room. This next product, called Direct Sense by Boston Scientific, is enabled to support live monitoring of cardiac tissue during a radiofrequency ablation. This technology is measuring the change in the electrical impedance of a tissue around the ablation catheter before the therapy as a baseline, and as the tissue is being irradiated, and in doing so can really minimize the amount of damage to surrounding tissue, which maybe not be able to be very clearly seen during the ablation task, unless you're relying on surgeon judgment and experience, which we could do with some more metrics rather than the soft and subjective of the experience of a surgeon. So it's been designed to work with Boston Scientific's mapping systems and ablation catheters to provide a holistic system experience and feedback to the user. All right, moving into COVID, there's a bunch of different technologies here for us. The first one is the idea of technologies that can identify social distancing better than Spot from previously, occupancy capacities, as well as even recognizing if the users are wearing, if the passengers or people passing through the area are wearing face masks, developed by IWIN, which I believe is a French company. So they're using security cameras with our AI, and as part of this Motorola subsidiary, they are identifying automated reporting when people get too close to each other. Potentially, you can imagine this being used for contact tracing later by an employer to understand that Joe on the right passed by Peter on the left, and one had COVID and the other didn't, and therefore one of them needs to also quarantine, as an example. The results are displayed in a cloud-based dashboard to help inform safer work environments. And they are trying to make this technology available for offices, factories, as well as retailers. Also in the context of identification of COVID transmission, this Safe Distance product by Lopus in Belgium is a wearable that can measure how far this device is, when it's worn, from another device worn by someone else in the vicinity. So there has to be a kind of a collective universe who's wearing these things in order for it to work. But when it gets too close, it vibrates and emits a warning sound to encourage those two individuals to move further apart. It can be worn as a clip or a lanyard, and it has wideband tech to measure within just a matter of 15 centimeters, so a fairly high fidelity. And there's no infrastructure needed to be able to get the system to be workable. All right, moving into screening and testing for COVID, One Medical is a primary care service available, I believe it's in California, and the membership only kind of concierge doctors group, but they've evolved their practice to help with not only their patients coming in to seek a COVID test to sign up and schedule test appointments through its app, but they're working with various different cities, including San Francisco and New York, to open multiple public testing sites and offering an in-app questionnaire for employees looking to screen and clear workers before they head to work. And that app directs an employer with symptoms or suspected exposure to follow up on care by, guess what, One Medical. But what's interesting to me about this is that, we've seen a number of different apps that, our doctors' offices are using, or even our employees are using to essentially do a kind of a checklist of your own health symptoms. But this company is actually taking it further and marketing what they've developed for more citywide basis, and provide a kind of a mechanism for funneling appointments for COVID testing as well. So they're taking it kind of one extra step beyond what some of the other apps are doing currently. Also COVID, but also robotics. There are a couple of robots out there that are now promising to take on the role of actually collecting samples for throat and or nasal swabs. One does a throat, the COVID throat swab robot by Lifeline is collecting a sample from the back of the throat, and the Brain Navi is collecting it from inside the nasal cavity. And this is a good thing because clinicians, if we have clinicians doing this manually, of course, there's the variability of human error in terms of getting to the right space in the anatomy, but also there's a tremendous amount of time and cost associated with putting on that PPE, changing that PPE between shifts or users, and of course that PPE is extremely expensive. Particularly where it's worn by so many different people. So this is a great thing. The idea of then this robot not just collecting the sample, but then depositing it into the specimen jar and then screwing the top closed without any human interactions other than the patient. Particularly when you think about all those HCPs who are lined up to administer these tests, it's a pretty boring and kind of meaningless task when we could really have them be more focused on higher value, more clinical responsibilities in the hospital caring for patients. So this one is an encouraging one, I suppose, but not if you're the patient getting the throat swabs from the robot. All right, this technology is a graphene-based COVID test. So if you've spent any time with me on these tech forums, you know how much I love graphene because it has so many uses, so many functionalities. It's come up so many times in different innovations as well. This is another one, so yay, graphene. This is so currently diagnostic tests for COVID are using a RT-PCR technology that amplifies the RNA so that tiny amounts of the virus can be collected and detected. But the RNA sample process and the test itself takes at least 3 hours. So this new test is based on a field effect transistor that incorporates a sheet of graphene that's coated with COVID antibodies. And when the COVID protein is added, so when the virus is present, essentially, it changes an electrical charge that can be detected and quickly discriminated so that you can detect the distinction between a healthy and a sick patient. And it's 2 times the sensitivity of a PCR method and presumably faster as well. Coming out of Korea. Korea's doing a lot of very interesting things at the moment in terms of technologies. So this next tech is called the cough monitor. Of course, there's COVID implications in terms of those folks who are having lung capacity issues as a result of the disease. Developed by Northwestern here in Chicago with Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. When we have these symptoms relating to COVID, it's difficult to kind of detect whether that whether the symptoms are really truly significant or not. Well, this flexible electronic device is able to track coughing as well as body temperature, respiration rates, and quickly identify changes relating to the condition. So you may have had some early symptoms, but we hear and we're learning that COVID can actually kind of take over the body very quickly in a matter of a 14-day or 21-day period. So this is attempting to kind of encourage a patient if they've had some early symptoms to now get to the hospital and get more more in-depth care. So the device is applied to the skin, as apparent from these visuals, and is worn 24/7. And in a 2-week trial, 25 patients were tracked, generating 1,500 hours of data that could be really analyzed in detail. This next device moves into more therapy applications for COVID. This is a vent-free respiratory muscle stimulator. So for patients, the longer they are on a ventilator, the harder it is. And their muscles, particularly their abdominal muscles, atrophy. And what this device is doing is trying to combat for that by using non-invasive electrical stimulation in tune with mechanical ventilation, so those muscles don't kind of lose their art form. The therapy can be initiated immediately at the start of ventilation as a kind of combined therapy and continues until the patient's weaned off the ventilator itself. And the company is partnering with others to speed up production and distribution. And they have been seeking emergency use, or they've gotten emergency use authorization from the FDA. In the context of staying with ventilators and also IV pumps for those folks in ICU care with COVID, Stanford University has tried to troubleshoot minimizing the amount of time HCP has to enter the room, but still provide care. And so what they've done is that they have explored the idea of remote controlling ventilators and other therapeutic instruments. So to avoid the need of having to put on new PPE in order to enter the room and then discard that PPE before exiting the room. As we know, PPE is in short supply, particularly the clinical level protection. And so this remote control essentially can help adjust for settings on a ventilator and IV pumps from outside the room. This particular photograph is showing what's happening in some hospitals where the patient's kind of positioned really quite close to the door of the room so that the IV pumps can be stood outside of the room itself and be manipulated and adjusted without having to go into the room. And so this is kind of another workaround that clinicians are really being creative in terms of finding solutions to minimize PPE use unnecessarily. Moving into areas of more joy, perhaps, this is a remote cheerer. So for those sports fans in the audience, you will know that if you've been watching any baseball like my family has been doing, it's really weird. It's kind of, the baseball games kind of look like practice because there's no people in the audience. And they put in some cardboard cutouts, you know, like Tom Hanks, you know, yelling out, you know, or being recorded, you know, some more hot dogs here. But now this Japanese company Yamaha have been developing a smartphone app that allows for fans real time to cheer or berate their team that they're watching and have those voices reverberate around the stadium in real time. So it's not pre-recorded, it's not piped in. And so the app allows the fan themselves to choose from a range of options, including cheers, applause, chants, and even boos. And that helps encourage and motivate athletes by hearing that support real time. And the tech has been piloted with 26 professional soccer and baseball teams in Japan in over 29 matches so far. And 300,000 users have actually cheered with 18 million taps, which I think is really great, that it's there's multiple taps going on in the course of a game. It's not just a once you're done experience. So this is really quite lovely as an idea. This next, now thinking about kind of protecting areas that are publicly challenging for social distancing. This is the idea of using drones to help us with disinfection processes developed by Eagle Hawk. They demonstrated this in a sports stadium in New York, where they're using an octocopter drone to dispense EPA-approved disinfectant via a mist. And the mist is designed to cover all exposed surfaces and kill COVID on contact. And this enables obviously large areas to be disinfected more quickly and puts fewer people at risk, particularly workers at that stadium. The idea of COVID use as an ultrasound portfolio by Philips. Sheila also found this one for us. So Philips have developed a whole bunch of different ultrasound platforms over the years, and they've been approved by the FDA to use these ultrasound platforms to help address lung and cardiac COVID complications. These are additional indications for the ultrasound systems. So we don't really think of ultrasounds necessarily as being used for COVID specific applications, but this is an interesting one. And so Philips is really trying to help as much as they can with developing and showcasing how their technologies can be more useful. So the combination of the different platforms involve handhelds and portables, and you can get that ultrasound where the patient is to better triage, particularly emergency room patients. And again, avoid transport to other areas of the hospital unnecessarily. The Lumify platform in particular is working with smartphones and tablets to provide both a combination of ultrasound and telemedicine together. So even a remote physician can be diagnosing at point of care for those clinics that are short-staffed, again, in developing markets. So N95 masks are in short supply, as we hear continuously on the news. Well, Barnes-Jewish and Washington University have figured out a way to disinfect them so they can be reused. They're using a vaporized hydrogen peroxide, or VHP, as a disinfectant, and ensuring that each healthcare worker in their process is taking off their mask and labeling it and putting it in a unit that can then move into the disinfection system. And at the end of the disinfection shift, that same healthcare worker gets back their same mask. So it's not a shared mask experience, but that one that you can be sure that your mask that you wore previously has been disinfected, again, in terms of reuse. So the bin is taken, the bin that the dirty mask has been has been placed in is taken into a sealed VHP disinfection room that fills with vapor over a 4.5-hour period. And then the masks are moved to an off-gas aeration room and remain there for another 2.5 hours until the sensors no longer detect the presence of that disinfectant hydrogen peroxide in the air. It's interesting that this is a solution that these two hospitals have arrived at as a really, you can show how, it really shows how stretched resources and supplies are in some of these facilities that they've worked around. They've set up space and processes to allow for this. In the context of other, maybe more innovative therapy options for masking, for those bikers out in the audience, and there we have many cyclists at Ximedica. If you don't want to wear a face mask whilst you're cycling, I don't blame you. This may be an alternative, and it's they're seeking Kickstarter funding for $99 per product or per unit. The IWIN blows purified air directly onto the user's face. There's a filtration module that can be mounted onto a bike helmet, and it contains a fan and a rechargeable battery that lasts up to 9 hours. The device draws in ambient air and can block small micron particles and kill bacteria via an antimicrobial coating. The purified air is pumped into a cup face piece that sits over the front of the nose and the mouth, as you can see on this image. And it can also generate warm air on a cold day. So for those more winter months that are coming up, this might be intriguing for those who bike. Also in the space of, continuing on the space of masks, the idea of a pneuma mask by Stanford University is a reusable face mask that prevents all transmission of pathogens. It was designed by adapting a snorkeling mask and a 3D adapter, printed adapter, and a viral filter cartridge. 2,600 units have already been used, with plans to ship 50,000 more from Stanford. The team are testing the design for decontamination and use. Maybe they should talk to the folks at Barnes Jewish. And also looking at how it might be autoclaved and also be cleaned through bleach as well. All right, in the other space, there's always a couple kind of interesting technologies, particularly in terms of automotive. Tom Ruth, again, from our engineering department, flagged this one for us, the Lane Cruise by Xmatic. So we've heard a lot about autonomous driving and some of those more expensive cars that are coming to the market, like the Teslas of the world, but this product offers a 5-piece system that can turn a traditional vehicle into a self-driving car. Wow. So the parts include a wheel controller, a brain box, that's the company's name for it, cameras, a GUI, brake and gas pedals. And of course, it costs less than an OEM full new car. And it's able to control steering and speed, as well as detect vehicles in front of the car to avoid collisions. Once the unit is installed, these owners should expect to have fewer accidents and lower insurance premiums as a result. Commercially available today for $2.2K. UC Glumicidal glow sticks by Arizona State University. One of our biz dev guys, Mark Stevenson, found this one for us. UV is, of course, a way to kill germs, but this particular project was funded by NASA to help with dealing with disinfecting bacteria in storage tanks, particularly thinking about up in space. You know, you don't want to use chemicals necessarily for very precious water supplies. So what this system is able to do is essentially kill biofilm that's growing in a water tank without impacting the taste of the water or requiring a lot of high maintenance. And this technology is using a pretty sophisticated LED that can deliver over 100 times more irradiation than what is currently offered. So in addition to obvious applications for astronauts on spaceships, the team is looking for other commercial applications, but they've developed a proof of principle. And so in order to get more funding, they want to be able to apply it to other technologies, and they're thinking that the healthcare space might be one that could be relevant for them. And then the last category here, before we jump into some kind of commentary and kind of Q&A, there's always one, is a kind of a curious idea. Not quite sure what they were thinking on this one, but this is called the Xylinium Biomask by some studio. It's a design project, but essentially it's trying to explore the idea of more sustainable options for some PPE that we are all wearing and disposing of in kind of more singular use. So this is a face mask made with bacteria cellulose that's grown through a combination of water, tea, sugar, and kombucha. The cellulose material is created on the surface of that mixture and over time it develops tight weave. In 4 weeks of growth, that cellulose sheet can become just under an inch thick and can be dried like leather, waterproofed, and it has a kind of a soft kind of leather-like texture, but is still able to be protective for the barrier for circulating germs in the air. And the biomaterial is actually translucent, which is interesting in and of itself. So it can be turned into a mask to help enable lip reading. And they claim, these two designers involved in some studio claim that they have an equivalency of an N95 mask, which is interesting. I'm not sure what bacteria on my face though. That's the snag there. All right, so this is an opportunity in the last 10 or so minutes that we have to have a discussion or Q&A around what we've shared, and I can bounce back. But I also want you to know that there's an archive of these tech forums going back to the last 5 or 6 years now that Ximedica keeps, and we use it to mine for various different projects and in terms of a database, and across all these different categories that we've talked about. We have a next tech forum planned for a month from now on 17th of September.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. That was great. So we just want to open it up to everyone. And as Jessica said, next month's forum is September 17th, if you guys want to join us. And I was thinking, we can challenge you guys to come, with your own MedTech innovations that you either have or found to share with the group. So for the last mask, Jessica, that you were talking about, it really made me thinking a lot of my friends are teachers going back to school, and one of them is a speech pathologist who has been, complaining and talking about how are you supposed to teach students, especially younger students, when they can't see your mouth. And she's had all these different types of masks, the ones that are see-through, and she was like, you can't breathe in them, they're see-through, you can't even have your air come through them. So this is really interesting, and I know it's just a design project, but it's very, very interesting to me that, you grow these, but they're able to be seen through.
Absolutely.
I'll go next. Hi, Jessica. It's Cindy. I was really interested in the IWIN face mask for bicycles. Obviously, I'm a big cyclist. And, we talk about this all the time because it's very, very difficult for us, especially when you're doing an extended climb, to have masks on. So it would be great to get more information on this and follow it. But I was really happy to see this come through. And I don't know how much you researched this, but so what would be the length of time you think that this would take to get to market, obviously depending on research?
Well, it also depends on the funding too. I think this device is probably not going to fall within kind of more regulated requirements in terms of getting to commercial use, because they're not claiming a medical indication. So I think they'll be able to get to market faster. And the fact that they're going after a Kickstart funding campaign, I haven't checked in recently in the last couple of days with how their Kickstarter funding is going. I would expect it to be pretty positive. There's a lot of cyclists out there, particularly now. I feel like there's more out there than would otherwise have been pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I think they've got a good shot at it, and I would expect this to be, depending on how far they are with their technology, this obviously looks like a rendering or kind of a basic prototype. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if this is out in the market within the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, and it seems like there could be a few other uses for this too, maybe just not cyclists. I mean, obviously, but that would be really great to follow this. Yep. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. I do see a couple of remarks about the robot swabs. This is, you know, when as an inventor or a kind of a developer of products, when you look at products like, when you look at ideas like this, you know, you are very aware of all the kind of, you know, benefits of it, of course, but also, you know, I can see some of the, our own design team who are in the audience, you're kind of reacting to, oh no, what if the robot does the wrong thing? Or how are we going to ensure that all the different anatomies that are, and all the variabilities of the human in terms of the size of the skull and the different cavities and the soft tissue involved, how really is the robot going to ensure that it is collecting the right sample in the right place without damaging the individual? Very, very interesting challenges to be considering.
Hi, this is Denise Valenti.
Hi.
So where I'm at, impairment measurement, marijuana, and driving, and we're really not a good fit anywhere, as we actually have technology that's forensics tool for law enforcement to determine if you're too high to drive. The irony, though, is we capitalize on existing visual field testing that is already out there for motor vehicles and the detection of eye disease. That's the space I come from, vision rehabilitation. I studied retina related to eye disease and Alzheimer's. And we're moving forward, but we're at a halt. Everybody's having problems with COVID, but we have an actually working prototype. We are moving slowly through the FDA. We are the very first product of any sort specific to marijuana impairment, any product including saliva or breath to actually move through the FDA. So it's been a ping pong of an experience. We expected that, being novel. Ironically, though, our process is we have to go through an entire clinical study. So that's why we're kind of stuck now, because we're looking for the resources to do a clinical study. The exciting thing is, though, Rhode Island is well set for marijuana quality research. Brown University has one of the very few centers where they're allowed to use NIH marijuana. I don't know if anybody's aware, but this fall, the University of Rhode Island Pharmacy Department is rolling out a very strong program certificate with the science as their courses, not necessarily the politics, but the science of both disease and products. So we're kind of excited to be in these spaces. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Rhode Island is a great state to do pilot tests because it has, you know, it's got a very diverse, if you will, patient population or user population. And also because of the size and scale of the state, it allows for, you know, it's a relatively controlled environment versus, you know, the great state of Texas. So I think you've landed in the right place location-wise.
Well, we actually have to stay in Massachusetts because legal adult recreational. We want for our initial studies to not look at chronic users. Just by nature, a medicinal user is a chronic user. So we actually are keeping feet in both states, but Rhode Island, because of scale, because of interest, and some of the way the neurobehavioral sciences is going, is a very strong state. The other thing that we just started working with is because we use a VR system, virtual reality system. We are partnering with New England Institute of Technology. We all know they have one of the premier gaming groups, and we casually throw out there that, unlike Kurt Schilling, our VR system is a good risk because it's absolutely muted already.
Right. Interesting.
Yes, I had a question, if you don't mind.
Go for it, I am.
The handheld centrifuge, like fidget spinner, right? That to me is really fascinating because you centrifuge like a lot of different things, right? But you need, like, you know, blood, all that kind of stuff. Did you see anything about that? If there were any other potential applications besides, I mean, there's got to be tons, right?
So
I
many.
don't know about the liquid size.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the liquid size and its capacity to work with specific samples. I think for me, when at least the centrifuge applications that I've been visible to or privy to have mainly involved blood. So I think the vigorousness of the spin may be something that is a limitation just for the fidget spinner to be able to be used in for some other tests. As when you think about urine, it's a much more fluid, less kind of sticky substance, and it doesn't dry out as quickly as blood does when exposed to air. And of course, when you look at this as a contraption, you would want to seal it more tightly in order to contain blood. But I think the urine application could have quite a lot of relevance for other urine-related tests.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me. It's like how cool is that? Like, did a scientist just see his kid fidgeting around and go, "Oh my God, that's it"? Like, I love it so much. I can imagine a lot of parents being like, "Hey, drug test." But that's really cool. I'm gonna ponder on that one. That one looks really fun.
So this is exactly why we do the Tech Forum, and we've been holding it for five or so years, is because it does, when you see these kind of mashups between a toy for a child and a diagnostic, and say, wait, this can happen. Maybe that feeds or inspires another application somewhere else on a project or a client that we're involved in. So this is thank you that you've made my day in terms of the meaningfulness of this.
I also think that the Japanese looking in your phone and being a part of the game is not going to work for NFL fans. We're too crazy. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jess. This was awesome.
Welcome. All right, let's close it up for today, and we'll meet in a month.
But thank you guys all for coming, and Jessica, thank you. That was great.